I remember when I was a little boy, I began to develop relationships with other little boys. I had a hard time making friends. And so friendships with other boys just didn't come easy for me. But I remember when a boy would show interest, it would start out pretty natural at the very beginning, but eventually it would turn into something a little bit obsessive. A great example was I remember being in PE class one day, and this a guy named Jim, who was pretty popular with the kids, actually developed a friendship with me. We spent some time together, and I was actually very enamored with him. And one time we were in PE class, I remember that he sat down and I sat down next to him. And then I noticed he got up and he moved down the bleachers a little bit. And then, I got up and followed him and sat down next to him there as well. And then he got up again and moved. And I got up again and sat down next to him. And finally he looked at me and said, "What are you doing? Why are you following me?" And I remember at that time thinking, I don't really know. I just know that I want to. I just know that I want to be with you. But I didn't understand the depth. I didn't understand the complexity. It was just something that I needed to have and that I wanted so desperately. And it was at that time that I realized, there was a problem. I didn't see the other little boys doing what I was doing at that time. When puberty kicked in, all of these desires that I had, wanting an in-depth and very intense relationship with the little boys, actually became sexualized. And my sexual fantasies were really not revolved around other girls. It was actually around other guys. And I remember thinking initially that this was odd, and I was trying to subscribe it to just curiosity, and that, maybe everybody else is thinking this as well. But I noticed that it began to grow stronger and stronger and stronger. And there was also an emotional component that came with that as well. That for me, it wasn't necessarily just the physical attraction with that, but there was an emotional attraction to these other guys. And this continued to grow up until, throughout all of my adolescence and my teenage years. I became a Christian when I was 13 years old. And when I accepted Christ, I was told that when you accept Christ, that He takes away everything. He takes away all sin. And that He would replace that sin with desires that are of His heart. And I thought, great. And when I accepted Christ, I expected all of this to go away. And 2 or 3 weeks later, I was being baptized. And it was in December, I remember this very clearly, that had a baptism service. And after the baptism, they took me and this other guy back to a room to change our wet clothes. And as I was changing, we were both getting out of our clothes and such, I looked over at him, and all of a sudden this wave of lust just came over me. And it was so disheartening to me, because I remember at that time going, this is supposed to be a significant event in my life, and one that has just sealed a commitment that I made to Jesus, and yet here this is so pronounced and so clear right now in this very moment where it shouldn't be. And I remember being very discouraged at that point in time and thinking that, okay, how do I get rid of this? And this just continued on, and I just found a way to suppress it and to lie to myself, because I was living in a culture, it was the rural South back in the early 1980s. You didn't talk about this issue. You certainly didn't share this with anybody in the church. And so I had no one to talk to about it. And so I just learned to, maybe if I pray about it, or maybe if I read my Bible enough, or maybe if I just completely soak myself in the Christian culture as much as I possibly can, this will go away. And it never did. And it continued on until basically my junior and senior year in high school, when I developed a really close relationship with another guy. He was a best friend of mine. And at that point in time, I developed my first full-on crush, or basically fell in love with my best friend. And that was a very extremely challenging time. I went into teenage depression. I began to experience suicidal thoughts. My family was becoming very tumultuous at that time, a lot of arguing, a lot of dysfunction that was happening within my parents' marriage, and just within me and my parents as well. And so it was a very confusing time, and a very painful time as well. and because that attraction was not being reciprocated on his part. And of course, there was no way I was going to come out and admit that I was gay or admit that I was experiencing this with him. So it just became a very unhealthy relationship. The reason why I didn't give up on God was because there was such a radical transformation in my life when I accepted Christ. It was something that just radically transformed my emotions, my mind, every part of my being. I was a different person, so I knew it was a genuine convergence that happened. And I truly loved the Lord. I had a call to full-time ministry when I was 15. When I was involved in youth group, when I was participating on youth Sundays and teaching and doing all of these things, I genuinely loved it. And so it's like I had two passions that were at war with each other. But fortunately, my passion for God was stronger in that time. And I was in a church that did celebrate who I was and that did support me as a teenager, which I think was a very key factor. If I hadn't been in a church to where there had been that level of ministry in my life, I don't know if it would have gone the same way. It was really my faith that really helped me to hold on and to have hope that there could be some redemption in the future. But it certainly didn't take away from the pain, and it certainly didn't take away from the intensity of those feelings at that age.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone. Your passion.
My first experience was with a woman, and I think that was really primarily me trying to convince myself and me trying to really embrace what I knew that I deep down wanted, but I really couldn't possess for myself. And actually, I was rehearsing. I was a music major at that time. I was in the practice room, and this guy knocks on my door and strikes up a conversation. And we talked for like 3 or 4 hours, and it was one of those, which really would be a red flag, one of those instantaneous relationships that happened within that short time span. And we became very close and very intense friends within a week time span. He was a believer. I was a believer. His parents were evangelists that traveled all over the world, and so he was very committed to his faith as well. And we had developed this relationship to where, well, I'll hold you accountable, you hold me accountable. And that accountability relationship really turned into a 3-year relationship where we really weren't separated for more than 2 weeks out of that entire 3-year time span. It wasn't just a physical relationship, it was also an emotional relationship. And that it became emotionally, verbally, and eventually physically abusive as well. And so I was in that for 3 years, and I heard from the Lord. It was very clear. He told me that I had a choice, and that choice was that I could either choose the path that He had for me, or He would give me over to what it was that I was pursuing. One would lead to life, the other would lead to death. And so from then on, I moved to graduate school in Colorado, and that's where I really began trying to make a change or discover if there was something else, an alternative to what I was feeling. And so I began to walk that through for a number of years and really just doing what I had always known to do, just basically suppressing it. I found a small church that was just outside of Nashville, and I kind of took the initiative to tell the pastor what I was struggling with. And initially, he seemed very receptive. He seemed supportive. He told me at the very beginning he really didn't know what to do about it, but that he was going to walk with me and support me along the way. Well, this went on for a few months, and I felt good about the church that I was in. Then eventually he had me lead worship. I led worship one Sunday, and the next week, or the next Monday, he called me into his office, and he said, "Jeff, I just need to talk to you a little bit." Okay. And I came in, and he said, "I'm really going to need to pull you down from leading worship for that Sunday." And I said, well, why? And he really wouldn't tell me, and I really had to press him to get him to tell me what the issue was. And he eventually said, "Well, I just feel that I need to impart my masculinity into you. And I'm just really concerned about your demeanor and your mannerisms. And I'm just uncomfortable with having you up there. Well, these are scars I've been living with all of my life. The way that I carried myself, the way that I talked, the effeminacy that I had in my character was something that had been ingrained all of my life. So I didn't really understand how to change it or what you could do. And unfortunately, it was one of the worst things he could have done at the very beginning, is to address the symptoms rather than the root issues of what I was struggling with. It was after that I went to him, and I had discovered another church, the church that I'm currently now at, New Song, and I really felt connected there. And I went to him, and I really wanted his blessing. I didn't want to just pick up and leave a church offended. And I went to him and explained it to him, what I was looking for, and how he had hurt me. And he reluctantly gave me his blessing, and we left as friends, and we left on good terms. And I came to this church, and I remember sitting and getting a meeting with my current pastor right now, and I had a pretty big chip on my shoulder at that time. And we had this meeting, and I basically gave him my entire story, everything that I had gone through and experienced. And I just asked him, I said, this is what I'm struggling with, and you need to tell me up front if you have a problem with it, because I really don't have time to waste, and I need to know that you're going to be committed for the long haul. And his response, I remember, it was very clear. He just basically said, no. Is there anything else? And I felt completely disarmed because he didn't give me anything to counteract or go after. And that actually was the best response he could have given, because in that response, he did communicate to me that this is not an issue, and I'm not going to let it be an issue. I want to get to know who you are as a person, and I'm committed to walking with you as a person. And there was really no program. There was really nothing that addressed my same-sex attractions point blank. What it was consistent teaching, consistent relationship, all pointed and focused at helping me to become a mature disciple. And it was through that, it was through my growing in the knowledge of the Word, and therefore allowing the renewing of my mind, which led to transformation, that I began to see, as I matured emotionally and mentally and spiritually, that I also began to mature sexually as well. And where there had been some stunting in my past and some lack of identification with my own gender, as I grew more secure in who I was able to actually connect with my gender better and actually realize that, no, this is who I am. This is my identity. And it was really just a wonderful, challenging, and very painful journey over those number of years. But in that process of that journey, I also gained a family as well that I walk with and I live with today.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone.
I know one of the things that's very challenging for pastors as they look at this issue is that it can be very intimidating. It is a sin issue, and there are things that contribute to this, just as there are things that contribute to a number of other issues in our life. And so I think one of the primary things that pastors can do is just to take the homosexual lens away and to look at the heart of the person, the woundings, the hurt, the wrong ways of thinking, the emotional dysfunction that lives in their life, and address that primarily on. Because so many times I've seen pastors that will become paralyzed with this issue, especially if it involves other members of the congregation. They have a crisis event, or something happens within their group, and they don't know how to deal with it because, well, it's a homosexual issue. And the first thing I tell them is, well, how would you respond to it if it were a heterosexual issue? Why are you treating it any differently? And I've seen that help in a number of ways. And I think that one of the things that pastors can do is to really just not cloud it so much by looking at it as such a special project or a special problem, but to realize that they are equipped to address the core root causes and the core issues that exist within that person, just as they are with everyone else, and to remove that stigma and to look at the heart of that person. As a result of my journey, and as a result of being in a safe church and in a healthy church, it has really sparked a calling within me and a passion within me to help people find safe churches and churches that are committed to walking with them and recognizing what a safe church is that their commitment to community, their commitment to relationship, their commitment to raising mature disciples, and first and foremost, their commitment to Scripture. And that is basically the requirements for any healthy church. I think a church would want to join the Exodus Church Network because they're committed to speaking to this issue in the context of our society today. That the church does need to stand up and have a voice about this issue, and to not let the culture dictate what this issue is about, but the church to rise up and to raise her voice as saying that there is an alternative, there is a hope, and there is another way. Contrary to what culture and society is saying, we are speaking up and we are standing for the truth to say that there is hope, there's redemption, and there's restoration. That is primarily one of the reasons of joining the church network, plus making themselves available to these people that are experiencing such intense levels of pain and intense confusion and an intense level of hopelessness as well, that they would come to the doors and saying, we are here to be a healing community for you. We are here to help you to grow in every way. We are here to be the body and the heart of Christ to you.
Your passion that beats for Christ alone.